Okay, we resume our council meeting and we go to 7.2, page 21, the adoption of the water meter charge and consultation document and supporting information and step.
Kia ora koutou. This report seeks your adoption of a proposed charging approach for the urban water supply services for consultation, now that water meters have been installed for the majority of properties in the urban area. A draft revenue and financing policy and rates remission policy are also presented for your consideration. The proposal is to transition to a charging approach made up of 50% targeted service charge, which is a flat charge per connection, and 50% volume charge based on readings from water meters over a 3-year period. And this would start from 1 July 2025. The benefits of water meter charging are outlined in the report, primarily are around improved leak detection, reduced water demand, and the ability to defer expensive investment in infrastructure over the longer term. The proposed transition sees the gradual phasing out of the use of the CV rate, which is currently used as a proxy for water usage, and it accounts currently for 70% of the costs. And the transition would also see a gradual phasing in of the volume charges and an uplift in the targeted service charge portion, which is currently 30%. Overall, the proposed approach changes how the urban water supply services is funded, but doesn't intend to change the overall amount that council receives in revenue. And it's been developed in consideration of a need to result in meaningful water reduction, ensuring that water is available for essential use, to minimise impacts for low income and high occupancy households, and to reflect the current circumstances of the district, noting that we currently have quite high water consumption and high water loss comparatively. It is proposed that the approach will be monitored over time for the impacts on the community and council's revenue, and adjusted through annual plan processes as needed. To support with those with less ability to pay, we've proposed 3 changes under the rates remission policy, primarily to support households in financial hardship who have incurred high volume water charges, and those who may need assistance to repair water leaks, and also a remission for excess consumption from a water leak, provided that it's been repaired promptly. The proposed changes to the rates remission policy would require a pool of funds to be allocated through the annual plan and subsequent annual plan processes. And adoption of the material today would enable community consultation to occur so that the community has a chance to have their say on the proposed approach. The proposed consultation runs from 14th of November to through to 13th of December, with hearings to take place before Christmas on the 18th, 19th of September, and that enables sufficient time for any changes to be reflected in the annual plan to implement the new approach from 1 July next year. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Steph? Councillor Johnson.
Just one question. You know, when we talk about the temporary financial assistance of up to $300, would we at the beginning of implementing water meters have a separate budget set aside for proposed applications for this?
So that would commence, the policy adoption would be in place from 1 July next year.
Yeah, I understand that, but if we've got 100 households that qualify for $300 assistance from council, would we have a separate budget for that money?
The intention is that there would be a pool of funds through the annual plan process, or a separate allocation allocated for that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what I wanted to ask.
Any questions for Steph? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. Just one following up with Bex's question. Why is the amount $300?
It was reviewed in line with other councils and the remissions that they offer, and consideration of that. So that was the amount that we came to consider, taking into consideration the support provided against, I guess, balancing council's financial commitments and use of funds for other activities.
Further questions? Councillor Helena.
Just want to understand the graphs, Stephanie. So, for example, on page 45, you look at the family of 5 single dwelling and a family of 6, or even a family of 1. But so I see for a dwelling worth about $300,000 on page 45. The orange is the current cost of 1,100 litres per day. Is that right? The orange bar diagram?
Yes, yeah, current policy is in the orange.
And then under the new system, after 3 years, the cost of that same amount of water will be about $800. That's how I interpret that graph?
Yes, that's correct.
And then if I go to a $4 million home, cost of their water, 1,100 litres per day, is about $2,800. Yeah, and then after the transition, after 3 years, that same amount of water will cost them about $800. Is that right? Have I interpreted that right?
Yes, the same amount of water would have cost around the same amount, yeah.
So, and that pattern's pretty much the same through all the graphs, where the high-valued homes, after year 4, their water costs are actually, assuming they stay within the limits, their water costs are well down. Is that correct?
From the current policy,
From
yes.
the current policy. And for low-income homes, it's sort of the other way around. Is that your interpretation?
Yes.
And I'm wondering particularly, like in the high-income, if we go to, for example, the graph on page 42, single property with one connection and the $4 million home, the cost of water has come down 85%. So that home, I don't know if we have any, but that home, if it was to spend the same amount as currently, they could use 7 times the allocated amount of water. I suppose that's a comment, not a question. I apologise. I'll come back to that in the comment section. Yes, so thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Bogan.
Clarification on that first graph that you talked about, there was, in comparative to the $300,000 home, it was a lesser amount for the more expensive property. And all of the other models that we've provided here, it's a comparative amount. It's just a larger drop across the board for those higher incomes, because at the moment, of course, because it's based on CV, it is that they are paying a higher amount at the moment.
Yeah, I understand that. And so if I've got a $4 million house, I'm going to get my water a lot cheaper. But if I like to have hot baths, I can now have 7 full hot baths a week, and it's only costing me the same in 4 years' time as it's costing me now. Well, assuming that's using up.
That's right, because we are moving to that user pay.
Yes, yeah. I just wanted to make sure I understood the graphs, because it depends on what I'm going to say next in the next part of the meeting.
Okay. So, and I can just clarify that there's very few properties above 1.5 million value in Masterton Urban. So you probably need to just cut off those right-hand bars and just look at the spread between the 300 and the 1.5 million is where most of our residential properties fit.
Just on that, what would be the proportion of our homes within 300 to 600?
80%.
80%.
Councillor Bogan.
So it would be fair to say there are going to be some low-income people in higher value houses. I'm talking about retirees. Okay, so this will certainly help those with that. Why not?
Yeah, it's based on, the impacts are based on the CV value of the property. We don't know what the income of those households are.
But you know, we've got a fairly large retired population here, so and it's pretty hard to see some certainly live in houses over that 500,000-600,000. So that would certainly help some of those retirees, wouldn't it? Yeah, having that water.
In their own home.
Yeah, in their own, yeah.
So their home value that they're paying rates on at the moment, if their water use is low, this change is going to mean they'll pay less.
That's what I was
Councillor Lennox and then Councillor Lennon.
I just need to be reminded, I feel like we did cover this in a workshop, but how do we come up with the $2 metre cube rate?
It's approximately our cost to deliver water
Okay, yep,
uh,
currently.
currently.
Thank you.
Councillor Lennon.
Yeah, just coming back to Councillor Bowyer's point, you make a good point, Councillor, because I think there are a number of retirees who have worked their whole life to secure a lovely home, which is quite high in value, and now on a benefit. Might have other incomes, we don't know that. But some of them, you did right, because they're some of the people that speak to me. And I think that was one of the reasons we moved to more user pay than a sort of a flat charge. However, I wonder if there's scope for those people to put in a remission on their water rates. Just a thought. My next question is, the CV, is it officially a proxy for water use, or is it officially a proxy for income? What's the council, where's the council position? Because I always thought it was a proxy, and I've heard it said in this room, a proxy for income.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's wealth tax.
No, I know what it is, but it has been used as a proxy for income, right?
Not income, but the term ability to pay.
Ability to pay.
So it doesn't match income, but if you have a higher value house, the assumption is you have more ability to pay. So it's not necessarily you have more income. And Karen might have a better distinction than that.
No, not at all, that was perfect. But in this instance, when we're talking about user pays, we use it in water policy for the amount of water that you may use, because the assumption is the bigger the house, the more water you will use. So now that we know, we've got water meters in, we know how much water people use, we don't need that proxy anymore. But yes, we also use it in other policy discussions around affordability and ability to pay, the assumption being the bigger house you have, the more money that you have to be able to subsidise people with less money. But as we just talked about, that is really an assumption and may not necessarily be.
And which was the assumption? The bigger house means more water use.
Yes, and that's why CV, you can use that CV as an explanation when you're talking about your rationale for rates and the components of rates, and when you have water rates. So that's how we use that. So I think I don't know of an example of an authority when they moved to water metering. Now that you can actually measure how much you use, you don't need to have that proxy. You don't need to rely on the assumption of the bigger the house and the water use, because you've got that component as a measured usage.
Okay. And so, over the last, I don't know how long, we've used CV as a mechanism of taking money from our people. Is it true that it's essentially those with a higher value property or with a greater facility to pay potentially, we've taken more from them to ensure those that have the less ability to pay can access council services? Is that the general thinking behind CV?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes.
Guys, the power board don't have a CV to charge for their power.
We're not the power board.
I know, but it's a service.
This is question time. At
I
the
know,
moment.
but I'm just worried on it was that.
Councillor Goodwin.
I'll pose the question that addressing Karen's comments, that the CV is an extremely crude measure to vary charging, whereas a water meter is a very precise means of charging for water. And because of wider issues about environmental health, etc., we and many other councils are going down the road of charging volumetrically.
Councillor Thompson.
I'll pose it as a question. The other thing I thought, which have you done intentionally, you say at the moment that our average usage is 664 litres, which is 2 times what Auckland's is. No, not quite. Twice. Oh, twice. Anyway, and yet in year 3, you're still allowing for a bulk allocation per day of 616, which is kind of twice where we want it to be. So I think I was actually surprised that the bulk allocation is so high in year 3. You know, I think that's really generous because that's just about what we're averaging every day now with 45% leakage expected.
Yeah,
So was that intentional?
I think it's reflective of the modelling at the moment that we expect some behaviour changes, but it's a little bit uncertain as to what they might be, and which reflects back to the comment about needing to monitor this over time and make adjustments as needed, because it's a bit hard to understand at the moment in year 3 how many leaks would fix, how many people would have reduced their behaviour.
The bulk allocation each year, though, is extremely generous.
Any further questions? Councillor Goodwin.
This is a 3-year process, I think. So if it transpires that a year after we introduced this, that there was actually only 2 leaks and someone found them and they patched it up, then these numbers change. And do we have the flexibility to say, oh, whoops, we've just fixed this ginormous leak.
Yeah.
We're going to change the numbers, etc. Are we?
Yeah, we've proposed to be able to review it and amend it through annual plan processes each year.
Do we have to consult on it?
I guess it would depend on the extent of changes, but I would not expect a same scale consultation, no.
Councillor Vargas.
Is it true that Wellington Water annually look at theirs, but that's under a separate company, it's not the council, is it?
I'm not sure,
Wellington,
sorry.
not Wellington Water, Auckland Water.
Watercare.
Your Watercare review these annually.
I'm not sure of their
Robin, do you know?
review process.
All I know is I get a bill every month and it goes out of my bank account.
Call the plumber. When I see
As long as water comes out of your tap, you should be grateful.
Any further questions? Sorry, Councillor Helena.
What's my question? Just in terms of the consultation, will it be clear to our community that there's sort of 2 things coming at them around water? Is that potentially, if this is approved today, volumetric charging and no CV involvement, and then local water done well. So there's sort of 2 things stacking up for them. I'd hate our community to think that this is the local water done well initiative.
Yes, and we've prepared some frequently asked questions to supporting information for the website in relation to local water done well and how those 2 fit together. So,
Steph, I think that's a really good point, Colin, that this is all going to come at once. So the consultation, will it be staggered a little bit between the 2?
sorry,
The consultation between the 2 will be staggered, it won't be at the same time.
they're not at the same time. No, this won't come first, and that would be yeah.
This is very soon.
Okay, any further questions?
I was just going to say that this is very similar, is it not, to an earlier debate, whereas this is what we're going to go out to consult on, and our community will come back with feedback and queries and various things, and that's when we, before Christmas, I think it is.
So your question is that true?
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Very good
that's
at
true.
saying my questions. But that's my understanding of the process, and so the debate will happen before Christmas.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, any further questions? If there's no further questions, somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 21, moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Bowyer. Open for discussion. Yes.
Steph, I think it's a really good consultation document to go out. It's giving people plenty of notice, I think, of what's coming down the line, and so they can get used to it. We have these high users who will be able to fix some of these issues, and it'll just help get that awareness going that, hey, this stuff's coming down the train track here, and you're probably not going to be able to stop it. So I think it's a good document to go out. Yeah, it's coming down the pipe.
Any further comments? Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Gary. I think the document's really good, the consultation document. There's 3 clear options, and they're all quite different, which I think is really important. And I think it's going to be good that our community's given an opportunity to, regardless of who they are, where they live, to give us feedback, and perhaps from what they share, there'll be solutions to these problems about how we're going to be able to support all families. And you're quite right, Craig, there's people with not much money living in big houses on Townhouse Street, and there's also people with no money living in smaller houses on River Road. And I think we need to find a way to make sure all of them are okay. I really like that, in David's earlier report in the audit risk meeting, we saw rates for arrears are the highest they've ever been, so people are under a lot of pressure. So perhaps we'll get solutions for this process.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Helena.
Yeah, like the others, Stephanie, I thought it was a bold report. I read a bit of stuff on psychology, and even when we consciously try to write a report that's neutral, our subconscious mind often gets involved, and we shape a report along the way we want people to think. But I thought you've been very bold here, particularly with the graphs, because you're showing it to people how it's going to be. And I sort of haven't seen that level of risk being taken by a council officer too often. So thank you for that transparency. I have real concerns with this. I know a long time ago we talked about moving towards more user pay, and I supported those of you who moved that. But again, Matt, you probably need to dig it out of the minutes where I missed something again, but I was never of the understanding we're going to go completely away from CV charging. And I personally think we need some CV charging in here to take the burden off the low to medium value homes who mostly reflect low to medium value income earners. And I think there's ways around those in rich, wealthy homes who are low income. I think there's ways we can compensate them. So I think it's, again, what tends to happen to people who are struggling in this life. We make policy changes and the foot goes on their head and their mouth goes under the water a bit more. And clearly in the graphs, and I know, David, you've said there's not many $4 million homes, there's not many $3 million homes. We probably should strike them off the graphs. But 80% of our homes are 300 to 600. And that's where the biggest effect of this policy change is going to take place. And so for me personally, I can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Lena. Any people in Councillor Holmes?
Well, I'm a firm believer in user pays. And the user pay and education go together. And I think you'll find that if people are educated, once they start paying the bills for their water, they'll be educated to how much they can use. And I don't agree with the CV. I think that should be dismantled as well. You know, I've lived on a farm with water scheme, and we've had to live without our limits, and we've done it. And there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of farmers out there that have got bills for 30,000 for their water annually, and their income last year was a loss of about 100 grand.
Any further comments? Councillor Tudor.
Stephanie, your document for consultation, I think I'd like to recommend that you put some more diagrams in so that people are attracted to read what's in it, because people won't read just words. If you can include diagrams or pictures like you had in the other consultation about that long-term plan consultation.
Yeah. Yes, so we're getting a designed version done. It just wasn't prepared in time for this meeting, which will have pictures and make it a little bit more attractive and readable for the community.
Any further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put the recommendations. The recommendations on page 21 going on to page 22. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
Can I have that recorded, please?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much, folks. I think that is the end of the meeting, and thank you so much for today's discussion, and we can now go home. And we'll do the karakia.
Ora,